Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Thank you so much for clicking by. I am your host with the most, Jimmy Smith. This is a channel all designed around wine education. So if you are interested in a specific topic, such as Portugal, you'll find the information here. This video is designed along the lines of the diploma in wine. Very intricate detail around Portugal. And we are looking at the Introduction to Portugal series. So here you are, series 1. And we're looking at part 2 here on climate, soils and vineyard management. This video is available as free content. All the other parts in this series is available only on my e-learning portal. You'll find information about that across at www.winewithjimmy.com. If you do have any comments or questions and you really have to broadcast them, please do. Comment on this video below. Perhaps you've been to Portugal. Perhaps you regularly visit there, or you are a big fan of the wines, you like certain styles. Let me know. Okay, let's start to talk about Portugal's location before getting into climate, weather, vineyard problems, and so on. Portugal is the most westerly country of continental Europe. It's bordered on the west and the south sides by the Atlantic Ocean, and then on the north and the east by its neighbouring country, Spain, making up, of course, the Iberian Peninsula. The west of the Portuguese mainland is strongly influenced by the Atlantic, depicted here, of course, by my large blue arrows and grim sort of blue, rainy clouds that you can see there. Now, of course, this Atlantic brings that cold, rainy weather, particularly to the northwest parts of Portugal. And let's talk a little bit about these areas. Now, there are ranges of mountains that protect many of the more continental areas, the more inland, specifically in the north of Portugal. So these areas, because of the protection of mountains, will experience a continental climate, enjoying warmer and drier growing seasons. I have identified here on the topography map of Portugal on the left-hand side, a brown triangle, which is basically to depict the Serra de Marau, which is the mountain range sitting kind of in the middle north area, but protecting the Douro Valley, which sits to its east, therefore offering a natural protective layer against wind and rain. And as you know, many of the areas going much more towards Spain in the Douro Valley are very dry indeed. But also, we have in the warmer and drier south, topography which is more characterized largely by rolling hills and plains. And you'll see from the general topographical map on the left-hand side that it's much more of a green shade down there with only little bits of yellow. So here we have those rolling hills and plains in areas like the Alentejo, for example. The geology we find in Portugal. So we do need to discuss this because geology can have a significant impact on the final style of wine, as well as local climates too. Schist or granite are commonly found in mountainous areas such as Vinho Verde, the Dow, and also the Douro Valley. And you'll see a brilliant picture here of schist in the Douro Valley depicted on my topographical map with that brown triangle. Also parts of the Alentejo, where there is some more hills, can also find granitic schists too. And then in other places, certainly near the coast, such as Bairrada, Lisbon, Tejo, and the peninsula de Setúbal, have more varied soils, clay and limestone, and even some sandy soils. Here is a picture of Bairrada soils found on the topographical map here towards the Atlantic with my brown triangle. And this is clay and limestone in this picture. And then finally, we come back down to the Alentejo. You'll find some fertile alluvial soils here around riverbanks, specifically the Tagus or the Tejo, as it's called. You see some alluvial stones in your picture depicted on the topographical map on the left by my brown triangle. So, the production. The areas of vines planted in 2018 was 190,000 hectares, representing a reduction of 85,000 hectares in the last 30 years, a significant drop. Over 99% of the wine production takes place on mainland Portugal, the remainder from the islands of Madeira and also the Azores. Over the last decade, production of wine has varied between something like 560 million litres to 710 million litres, of course, depending on the weather, which can be dramatically affected by the Atlantic. A substantial number of high producing vineyards on the most fertile alluvial soils, especially in the Tejo area, but also in Vinho Verde and the Minho, have been grubbed up since Portugal joined the European Union in 1986. We mean that there have been subsidies, grants offered to those to get rid of their vineyards because of the concept of overproduction. There has been some replanting, though, focused on higher quality planting material and sites, and this has been restricted to avoid surplus overproduction. Now, the Alentejo, with a warm, sunny, dry climate together with a relatively flat topography, allows for the likes of mechanization. So, this area has seen a rise in investment and vineyard growth. European Union funds and the recruitment of consultant winemakers meant that Alentejo started to produce quality wines in that really approachable, soft, ripe style that was quickly popular on both domestic and, of course, export markets. This, of course, has a knock on effect, in turn, increasing further planting and investment. Now, compared to many Portuguese regions that are made up of many growers with small holdings, Alentejo has a high number of estates with large, relatively young vineyard holdings. And given its quite strategically wonderful location close to Lisbon, you're going to have an immediate market for it. So, with climate change, uh, drought, of course, has been a significant, notable factor in recent years, especially in continental inland regions such as the Douro, Dow, and Alentejo. This map shows you May of 2022 on the left and May of 2023 on the right. And you can see that in May 2023, much more of a significant amount of drought in in both Andalusia and Portugal, because it is much more sort of brownish in colour to the greens of May 2022. Other problems here. So extreme weather events can become an issue. So in the Douro Valley, it suffered from hail and storms in recent years. And in 27, the yields in the Dow were reduced by wildfires. I'm going to show you that very much on the next slide. You can find wet weather in more coastal regions that have problems with fungal disease. And then also the trunk disease, Esker, and the vineyard pest, the grapevine moth, are also common issues. Here's the picture here to show you one of the parts of the Dow area, so Santa Comba Dow in 2017, severely damaged by wildfires. All of the red dots are buildings that were completely destroyed. So this is not completely linked to vineyards, but it gives you an idea of the devastation caused. The slightly sort of pinkish dots are partially destroyed buildings. The yellow ones little affected, and there are some unaffected which are grey. But you can see certainly a very big problem in the northern part of this province with wildfires. The vineyard management here, so typically the pruning and training is cordon or replacement cane and then vertical shoot position trellised. A significant number of old bush vines can be found in the south, in Alentejo, but also in the Douro Valley in the north. And you'll get a smaller production in places like Drought and Bairrada. Now, these are usually planted in varietally mixed vineyards, and they produce very fascinating field blends. The vast majority of modern vineyards established from the 1990s are planted to one varietal or in varietal blocks. Now, in the past, all regions required authorization from the government to irrigate, but this is now not generally required. A degree of regulation may still exist at the regional level. So, for example, in the Douro Valley, producers must notify the IVDP, the Instituto dos Vinos do Douro e Porto, when they choose to irrigate. Generally, irrigation is only to be used in scenarios where a lack of water could jeopardize the quality, and it cannot be used for bolstering yields. Now, around 2,700 hectares are farmed by approximately 500 growers and classified as organic. This is a low proportion in comparison to some EU countries, but many growers and wine producers do practice, but they're just not certified because of the cost. Production of organic wines is expected to grow as the bureaucracy becomes a bit easier and there's a little bit more dosh to use as well. And biodynamic is becoming a focus too, with a real interesting rise of natural production focusing on many of the traditional techniques in Portugal. Well, that brings me to a conclusion of part 2, and on part 3 we're going to look at a generalization of the grape varieties in Portugal, and then part 4 we focus on some of the traditional and modern winemaking techniques in this exciting country. Please do get in touch if you have any comments or questions. You can do that by commenting on this video below, or contacting social media, or getting in touch by email. And if you do find yourself in the UK, please do come and say hi for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Goodbye.